Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it and give this video a like.
We got this little thing called a podcast below in the description. Go subscribe to that as well.
All right, John, stack them up, stack them up, stack them up, stack it up. Jim Nagy, been on the show before. This is what he tweeted, Senior Bowl. Would be surprised if Panthers' decision to trade for Sam Darnold didn't have something to do with the Niners targeting Mac Jones. So we can add Jim Nagy to the list of people that thinks or is saying Mac Jones to the Niners, done deal. We've got 23 days and counting, depending on when you listen to this, to the NFL draft. I mean, there is no middle ground with what most people are saying. It is everybody all in on Mac Jones. And now there are other trades happening, apparently, because of how much the Niners love Mac Jones. It's getting hard to stare in the face of this, Middlecoff, and stand firm on the hope, the belief that maybe this is all just one big smokescreen.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this the same way you are. He's saying that the Sam Darnold trade was consummated based on the fact that they also loved Mac Jones. Correct. As I read yesterday, he coached him or was around him at the Senior Bowl, Matt Rule. And they would have been fine with taking Mac Jones either at 8 or trading up to get him. And then they know that he's not going to fall. So it's not just Kyle that loved him. He's trying to justify. I guess Nagy doesn't care, but just try to show there are multiple teams that were smitten on Mac Jones.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly that. You are reading it the same way, that it's not only.
And they know that he's not going to get past 3. So it's we need to get a quarterback. Let's take this guy right now for a 6th, a 2nd, and a 4th next year.
Right. Yep. That is what he's saying.
I think that's fucking insanity.
So, if the Panthers had traded up, his tweet would have been something along the lines of, if they had gone up to 2, the Panthers, or do they know the Niners love Mac Jones? Yeah, exactly.
Here would be my question. Coming out of college, and I'm pushing back on the fact, I do think Mac Jones, who I'm trolling everyone if you follow me on Twitter about it, but I do think he's better than everyone is acting like he is. And I think he would be an awesome 34th overall pick, even though I'm actually anti-second round quarterbacks. I'd ideally love him in the 3rd. Could justify him 32 to get that 5th-year option. But in no world, Sam Darnold coming out of college. Now, I know we have 3 years of evidence now of him with the Jets. But Sam Darnold as a prospect and Mac Jones as a prospect. And I do think people, the way they viewed Sam Darnold a little bit, is still in the prospect kind of universe, just because they go, Adam Gase, what a disaster. That franchise, he got mono. It's just been Corona. The whole thing has just been a disaster. So, and he's not 27 or 28, right? Like a Jimmy or Derek would have been going into their 4th year, because he came out, wasn't he like a 20-year-old? I think he turned 21 his rookie year. Remember, he was really young because he was a redshirt sophomore, because he redshirted at USC and then played the 2 years and then left. So he was really, really young coming out. But I just, now, again, he has 3 years of experience, and there's a financial, you had to immediately pick up his 5th-year option, which is newsy, but then you're like, well, of course, part of acquiring Sam Darnold is you're just taking him for the 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone, unless you could get him to me, if you get him for just a 6th-round pick, then you wouldn't be forced to give up the 5th-year option. But I think the moment you trade anything of value, which the next year's 2nd-round pick is, you got to pick up the.
Yes. And also, if you're trading something of value, it's because you think he can be good. And if you think he can be good, then cost certainty for the following year is not a bad thing.
But I know this, Joe Brady, who really became a star for one reason, Joe Burrow. And the one thing Joe Burrow had, and still I think has, we hope, comes back from the knee, is some ad-lib ability and definitely some athleticism, right? I think his comp, despite going number 1 overall, they compared him to I think he can be like a Romo type. And it kind of was some of those highlights right before he got injured. It was like, God, Joe Burrow does some fun stuff. Kind of Romo-y. Well, here's one who I know is not Romo-y and moves around. That's Mac Jones, who's not a mobile quarterback. The one thing Sam Darnold does have, which I thought which I like in my quarterback, is that ability to keep plays alive with his legs. Now, is he an accurate enough guy? Does he 2-turnover prone? There are definite questions. I don't think they gave up anything of consequence for them.
Yeah, I mean, no. But we can get to that separately. I mean, I think part of this is.
Do you believe that the Panthers were smitten over Mac Jones?
The Senior Bowl thing to me is not nothing, and ultimately Matt Rule's job. Matt Rule gets to pick who Joe Brady coaches, right?
Yeah.
Joe Brady doesn't. So I would have said no.
But Matt Rule is not a coordinator, so that guy should have a lot of influence. He needs that guy.
He should, but I mean, again, the Senior Bowl thing to me is not nothing. Like, I think we've seen year after year after year, players get coached in the Senior Bowl, get drafted by the team that coached them.
Remember last year, Teddy got hurt, and they had to sign this dude from like the AAF.
Yeah.
Because he was a Temple guy, and I remember watching him. Well, he was a runaround guy.
Yeah.
Like if you go Rule, now granted, his sample size at Baylor and Temple, I would say he was used to kind of a mobile quarterback.
But so I agree
remember
with
that
all
little guy. It was
yeah,
like, God, he's
kind
of interesting.
Yeah, because the AAF was the AAF or XFL. AAF.
One of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think AAF.
But I like what I'm most interested in as it relates to this is the fact that everyone's talking about Kyle and Mac Jones, is that coming from the thing that Kyle hates, which is Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, the fact that he's coached those guys, or is that coming from somewhere else? Is that coming from people talking in the league about what Kyle likes? It's one thing. It's easier to ignore if we think it's coming from everybody jumping to conclusions based on who Kyle has coached. That makes it easy to say, nah, I don't think he's going to do that. There's never any leaks, whatever. But are all these people in the league? Jim Nagy knows people. Schefter, we'll talk about Schefter. He knows people. Like, do they all think Kyle likes not guys like Mac Jones, but actually likes Mac Jones? By the way, John, we're wearing our American Giant t-shirts today, American-Giant.com, promo code HAM.
Here's what I do know about Jim Nagy. When you run the Senior Bowl, you are on a first-name basis and have every general manager in your phone, because those guys are picking your brain about players. Jim Nagy probably already knew a ton of people when he became the director of the Senior Bowl. He now knows every decision maker. Now, not all GMs are decision makers, but you get what I'm saying, in the NFL. And I would imagine the relationships have just organically grown since he's been doing it the last couple of years, right? He literally has a job where they all come to, and he's the boss. So he leans on them to select players and to just gain information. What would you be doing right now if you're those guys? Hey, Jim, you hearing anything about like what the stack of receivers, some of my guys in my division are drafting around me? Well, what do you think they're asking about the quarterbacks?
Well, you don't think he talks to Kyle? I mean, Kyle's been there, worked with him. You don't think he?
Yeah, Kyle coached the team.
That's what I mean.
I mean, don't you think he hung out with Kyle and just had some basic conversations about what he was looking for, who he wanted on his team? 100%. Like these things now, and we'll get into Schefter a little bit. You might want to Google. Well, I guess I'll wait. I'll save that little nugget. But these guys, the connections to Kyle, like all these people saying these things do have connections, right? Not even just random guys on TV, but Sims, college buddies, roommates, share a tattoo. Nagy, Kyle literally coached his game, and I'm sure he's friends now with John Lynch. Schefter wrote some books that matter in the family. It's like, it's starting to like drip.
He wrote Mike Shanahan's book, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. Guess who he has going third, John?
Mac Jones.
I'm not surprised San Francisco traded up to 3. I am surprised that everything you hear points towards Jones being the Niners pick at number 3. That's what he said.
It would be complete opposite of what we've experienced the last 3 years if this just plays out the way it feels like it's headed, right? Because we were texting about it, like, why does it keep happening? But it's getting to the point now where you would have to be almost naive to think it's not a possibility. I don't think it's a lock, but I am no longer naive enough to like, is it crazy that Matt Rule and those guys love Mac Jones? Again, we're not talking about a Cal Poly quarterback. We're talking about Alabama's quarterback who's 2-star wide receivers who are both going to be top 15 picks, said he's better than Tua. Who, again, Tua might not be good, but he did go 5th overall last year. So you start adding things up, you gotta see both sides of it. And then Kyle, he can say whatever he wants. His career of the guys he's coached and kind of gravitated toward do speak to Mac Jones.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said on the last podcast, I do think there's a lot of logic to this, is that Kyle is a guy that takes chances. But I also think if I were to use my own logic against me, Kyle might argue Mac Jones is taking a chance. Like, that is taking a chance. What are you talking about? That would be a risk, and I know you agree with that. Here's the other thing. If I took Mac Jones out of this and just said, is Justin Fields surefire? Is Justin Fields a surefire NFL star? Top 10 quarterback? Is Trey Lance a sure? So Kyle would be like, what are you guys acting like these other guys? Like, is it crazy that I think Mac Jones will be a better pro than those two guys? That's what he would argue, right? On draft night, if he drafts Mac Jones, that would be, I don't know if he could say all of that stuff. Like, I don't think Justin Fields is going to be any good. But that is what he would be thinking. I don't think this guy's going to be. I think this guy is going to be better than these guys. And who can you tell? Well, how can you guarantee me Justin Fields or Trey Lance is going to be anything?
Yeah,
I understand how you arrive there from a coaching standpoint. Now, your point as a scout is like there's no scout that could possibly have this guy ahead of those two guys, especially
in the history of the NFL. In the history of the NFL, there has been one human alive, if this comes true, that would be willing to trade pick 12, multiple other first rounders, and a third rounder for Mac Jones. Like that, eventually when you make a trade, you're like, okay, they're doing it for a quarterback. Well, eventually, it's like when I trade 2 1s and a 2, I get Jalen Ramsey or I get Khalil Mack. Like that's part of, or Jamal Adams, right? I get that motherfucker. I get Diggs for a first round pick. Boom, boom. Everyone was cool with the trade because like, okay. And then it's like, whoa. Like you don't need to be, Joe Douglas or John Lynch or Adam Peters or any scout in the history of the league to go, that's insanity. Because that's what it is. At the time of the draft, as someone in the league texted me last night, and I completely concur, it would be the most arrogant pick in the history of the league. Not like there have been crazy picks on draft nights, but you have to if the Niners were just at 3, it would be less crazy, right? They had just lost all those games. They moved up to go get this guy. That's insanity.
Well, part of the reason, if that's what happens, it would be because maybe they do believe what Jim Nagy said, that the Panthers were going to take him at 8, and there were going to be no quarterbacks left for them at 12, and that everyone would be gone, right? Because I know you wouldn't love the pick if they drafted him at 12 with 4 other guys gone, but it would be a totally different conversation than what you just said.
Yeah. 100%.
But
my pushback is, Kyle, there's 3 or 4 Mac Jones every year. Like that CJ Beathard, that just low physical tools that can, in theory, do what you want them to do. Like, I can find that guy till the cows come home in the 2nd and 3rd round every single year. Like, and part of it is your coaching. Like, you had one of these moments with a guy from Iowa who fits. If I put Mac Jones at Iowa, he is CJ Beathard, just taller. Like, that's it. That's the pushback on Mac Jones. If I put him at Washington, or Iowa or NC State, maybe Kyle still would love him, but he would never have to trade this for him. Like, what are you doing? It will be one of the most controversial picks in scouting circles in the history of the league.
Yeah.
Again,
that won't change whether or not it can work.
Factoring in the trade.
Yeah. That won't change whether or not he's better than Justin Fields or Trey Lance, but it does change if he's a top 17 quarterback and not a top 5 quarterback. What you get if 3 years from now you didn't have 2 other first round picks and he's not good enough to carry you, that's where it comes back into play.
And listen, for a guy that's only had 1 winning season in 4 years, he has a ton of equity. Everyone loves him, and rightfully so. Like he's cool. He's a great offensive play caller. Everyone, all the players that matter, rave about him. People want to come here. Despite crazy taxes, right? I mean, that factors in the NFL when money is not just flowing. Like every guaranteed million, not dollar, every guaranteed million is hard to come by. Like there's a big difference between 20 guaranteed million and 35 guaranteed million, right? It's a big deal in the NFL. That's why all people usually gravitate toward the most money. And just like it's where Jacksonville and the Texas teams do have somewhat of a built-in advantage. Kyle has fucking blasted through that. People love playing for him, especially the guys that have played for him. They want to stay. I do think with the fan base and just the way we talk about him, it would dramatically change forever the moment Mac Jones. Like there would be a bullseye on his back just the way he's judged. And that was the moment the trade was made. But I think the controversy that would follow the pick would just be something that would just change the way we talk about him if it went bad, because I think it could get really ugly.
Yeah, but it could also go – I mean, this is what he'd be banking on is, okay, so I don't care what you say about me after the draft. I care about what we're saying in January. So
which is true.
What did we do? Which he would have some control over. But it would also go the other way.
It would.
You do something crazy, you get that's Elon launching rockets into space and having them land on water.
Yeah.
Sometimes they blow up.